Hello, so today we're going to be talking about playing contested, so playing the same comp as somebody else. Often it's very detrimental to play the same comp as another person, because often it can be really hard for you to hit your units, and it can also be very hard to stabilize later in the game. However, this is something that's very common. You'll see a lot depending on how strong certain comps are, and it's actually part of the built-in balancing of TFT, that certain strong comps become less strong because more people play towards them, so it gives other comps a lot more breathing room. But we're going to be talking about playing contested and some different strategies you can employ and when you should contest and when you should try to pivot. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe because it does help me out. Work on our 10,000 sub goal giveaway. We're actually getting really close. We're almost at 8,000 subs, which is way more than I ever thought I would get. So thank you for everybody for their support. I do daily TFT guides as well as like more general stuff like this one, where it's just usually like a little bit of a talking piece, and then some that are more specific, like for beginners, how to play reroll, how to position, different ways of optimizing different comps, etc. If you like that type of content, or if you've watched some of my videos in the past and you're stopping by a second time around, please make sure to like and subscribe because it does help me out. Now, let's talk about contesting. So what is contesting? Well, contesting is usually when you're playing the same comp as somebody else. That's basically it in a nutshell. And the idea is that you're generally okay doing this. I'm not here to say never contest, don't contest, blah blah blah. I'm not like saying that. I generally prefer to pivot and try and play a unique comp because that's my enjoyment of the game of TFT. But you're generally okay to contest a comp unless you're playing reroll. The odds are not that bad and it's not that horrible unless there's multiple contesters, which is what we're going to be talking about in a second. Reroll though, you usually want to be uncontested. And the idea is that if too many people contest units, so not only the comp, but the units themselves, if too many people are buying the same units, then on average, you're going to hit your units later. And on average, you won't stabilize as early as you possibly could. And stability just means that, maybe you're not winning every round, but you're at a point where you're not losing every single round. And a lot of times in TFT, there's these points where everybody spikes their board and you have to keep up with the stabilization points of the other people in your lobby. If everybody spikes their board and you're unable to find your units, you won't be stable. And this is often what leads you to a very fast and very hard bot 4. There's already variance in TFT, which is very difficult to deal with, but having somebody contesting the same comp as you and then you not stabilizing because of that just makes it a whole level of difficulty more that can often put you in a really bad spot in your games. So it kind of sounds like it's bad to contest, but why would you contest? A lot of times you basically have to ask yourself these two questions or think to yourself these two thoughts. Do you have a good spot for a particular comp? And when I say good spot, is it actually a good spot, or are you just like, copium, like trying to fake it and pretend that you have a good spot because you're just trying to hard force a comp? If you actually have a good spot for a comp and you also don't have a viable pivot, then your best strategy is often to contest. It is what it is. It's the way the game is sometimes, and that's just part of playing TFT. But you always have to ask yourself these two things, right? Playing a comp where you don't have a good spot for it is equally bad as having a good spot for a comp, getting scared off because the rest of the lobby is forcing towards it, and then pivoting to something that you don't have a good pivot option for, and then losing the game anyways. Your average placement is going to be around the same. And this usually happens when certain comps are really broken or really strong. As a general rule, reroll you want to be uncontested. For cost, it's usually okay to have one other person contesting. So 2 people playing the same 4 cost comp, that is almost standard. That is a normal occurrence that usually happens. However, if something is particularly broken, or if something is really strong, or the opinion on a certain comp is really popular that people want to play because it's easy to play or stuff like that, then it's common to see more people forcing. In that case, with rerolls, a lot of times one other person sub 3 cost is typically okay or expected, and then 3 cost you still want to be uncontested. If you're more than one person playing a 3 cost reroll, then you know for sure that both of you are probably going to bot 4. With 4 cost, sometimes you'll see 2 other people playing it for a total of 3 people or even more people playing it. The idea is that you have to be the better player, and you have to be the one that can properly analyze whether or not you have a good spot. In both cases, no matter how broken a comp is, usually, unless it's like giga broken, there have been patches in the past like that, don't get me wrong, but typically, at least in the modern like last couple months, year of TFT, one of these people will bot 4. Right? Often, if 2 people are playing the same comp, it's okay. You can maybe both make a top 4 if it's a 4 cost comp. But as soon as you get more than 2 people, so it's like 3 or 4 or 5 people playing the same comp, most of them are going to bot 4 because you won't hit early enough. and the other people will pressure you because they'll be able to hit their boards really efficiently, because while you're wasting all your gold trying to find a particular set of units that you want to hit, the other people that aren't getting contested are going to hit their boards a lot faster, tempo level, put pressure on you, and you're probably going to bot 4. But here's an example that I'm going to give. So the main reason I want to talk about this video is because I have been behind on my ranked journey. I have been playing, you know, as much as I can to try and speed up my process. I think I'm only like Emerald right now. Yeah, I just hit Emerald. I've only played 30 games so far. I played a little bit besides this on a different account, just because my computer was broken, so I was just trying to play a little bit of like mobile just to keep up with the meta and stuff like that. And I'm noticing a lot of people are just always playing Zeri. Everybody's always playing Zeri. And it makes sense, but it's not a really good strategy, and I'll explain why in a second. But basically, the Zeri comp is a really strong comp to contest, and a really strong comp to play multiple people, the same comp. And the idea is that with this Zeri board, it is very stable with 1-star copies of the 4-cost unit. So this is a board where you're playing 7 Exotech, and it revolves a lot around the fact that this Hollow Bow item, I don't know if it's bugged, I don't know why it's so broken. It's really fucking good on her. It's extremely fucking broken, and if you have a Hollow Bow Zeri, you're probably just instantly playing for a first. The Exotech item Hollow Bow is just so broken with this type of setup. You go Hollow Bow, you go IE, and you go Gwinsu. We'll talk about other variations after, but this interaction is so incredibly crazy. It's 100% getting nerfed in a couple days, right? It's 100% going to be nerfed by next patch. But this is something that applies no matter what the patch is. There's usually going to be a strong comp. In TFT, there is always going to be one comp that is stronger than the other ones. That's just how it is. It's just like a race, right? You can have a race of all the Olympic runners in the world. One of them's going to be the fastest, right? One of them's going to win the race. It's the same with TFT. You could have all the comps in the world. One of them is going to be, even if it's by a hairline margin, it's going to be the stronger comp. So contesting usually happens with these type of strong comps. Now, obviously, Zeri isn't a hairline better than the other comp. I would say Zeri comp is like a whole tier above everything else in the game right now. And the main reason is that it's very stable with 1-star. Remember what I was talking about before with contesting comps? It's like you need to get to a point of stability, right? On these previous things, you want to stabilize, or else you'll bot 4, and you want to hit your units. The thing that's really good about this is that Exotech gives you so much HP that a lot of times a Sejuani 1 and a Zeri 1 is stable. That's why a lot of people end up contesting the comp. It makes sense to contest the comp because you're going to be able to save a lot of HP and you're going to win against most boards on stage 4 so long as you find one copy of each of them. Because you only need one copy of each of them, it actually allows for a lot more people to play the board and not get super punished, especially during stage 4. It allows you to have a lot of breathing room, and that's why this comp is extremely strong. Now, obviously, when you hit Zeri 2 and Sejuani 2, you cap extremely high. Sejuani has an amazing stun, you have a lot of HP, the Sejuani lives forever, the Zeri pops off, stalls out long enough for this to actually absolutely delete everybody on the game. However, the problem is, if you don't have Hollow Bow, this comp is significantly worse. There are other variations of playing around Exotech, right? There's Zeri with Pulse Stabilizer, Hollow Bow. Then there's Zeri with the Pulse Stabilizer with the Hollow Bow, which makes sense, right? These are really, really broken interactions. Obviously, you can replace the IE if you have the Pulse Stabilizer, and this is like the best version of the Zeri. She just absolutely wrecks everybody. There's also another version of Zeri that's a little bit weaker, but it's one that's really strong if you play towards it, and that's double Gwinsu with Flux Capacitor. This was the old Zeri build that got a little bit nerfed. This build is still really strong and still really viable right now. The only problem with it is that it's not as stable as the Hollow Bow variations of Zeri. So when you're thinking about your contesting your comp, right, and we're thinking about the Zeri example, a lot of times you have to think about your pivot options, right? What is your expected placement with these boards? If you don't have a pivot, it makes sense for you to contest, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm saying a lot of people play Zeri, and that makes sense. You should play Zeri 100% of the time. However, if you don't have a good spot for the comp, you do not want to contest it. And also, you don't want to contest a weak or conditional comp. Here we're talking about Zeri, because Zeri is really strong with Hollow Bow, right? I say that very specifically. Zeri is very strong with Hollow Bow. She is still strong without the other stuff, but she's not very strong unless you have the Hollow Bow item. The other items, she's still playable, she's still strong, but it's a step down. It's a big step down from the Hollow Bow. Maybe the Pulse Stabilizer, you can argue, double Gwinsu Pulse Stabilizer is as good as Hollow Bow. I think that would be a little bit of a stretch to say, it is a little bit weaker. I would still argue that, right? The idea is that because it's a strong comp, it makes sense to contest it because you're basically playing for a win out with a comp that is extremely potent, extremely powerful in the meta. It has really good matchups because Zeri, her clones like can retarget ahead of her sometimes. I don't know how to describe it well. It's a hard interaction to explain, but she basically deletes melee users as well. If there's like a Zed board, if there's like a executioner board with Rengar, like a lot of these backline access boards also die really easily to Exotech Zeri because she has enough HP to live through them, and like her clones can retarget a little bit earlier than her sometimes, so she actually can just like turn around and one-shot units even if she gets stuck on somebody else. Like, it's crazy. So she's really good into those type of comps. This comp has a lot of frontline, so it's really good into vertical front to back style comps. So it's a comp that is extremely powerful, way overtuned, but also has really good matchups. There's not really a hard counter to this comp as is in the current meta. So that means that this comp is worth playing to contest, right? And that's what you should always ask yourself is, if I'm playing around Zeri, if I'm angling Zeri, should I pivot or does it not make sense? And the main tip for playing contested is to understand whether or not you have the better spot. There are lots of games and lots of examples that I see where people try and play this comp without this broken hollow bow interaction, or even without pulse stabilizer, right? If you have pulse stabilizer, you're not building IE. You have to build double Guinsu with pulse stabilizer. I think maybe you can like argue that you can do it a little bit differently, but if you're going for max cap, you need to have double Guinsu pulse stabilizer, or you need to have IE hollow bow. People play this from not having these spots. People will play this without having any of these items. They'll just do like something like this, like double Guinsu IE on the Zeri, and they'll call it a day. The problem is, if you're contesting a comp from a worse spot, you're going to have a harder time stabilizing. Those things that I'm talking about where I'm saying that she has really good matchups, you're going to feel the pinch. If other people hit their boards, you're going to be the one that suffers from that. So a lot of times what you have to analyze with yourself is, do I have the better spot? Now, if you have the better spot, that means you either have more HP, more gold, or better augments, or some rendition of all of these things. So a lot of times if you're thinking about augments, you know, if you have more gold, something like invested, if you have things that like help you in your general like spot, something like level up that gives you more gold in order to hit your board, or if you have like, there's some other situations, obviously like an Exotech emblem if you have one early, or like general like stuff like Spirit Link, for example, things that help with your tankiness so you can stack up your Guinsu really well. There's different augments that are really powerful with these with this particular setup of a board. If you have those augments, you want to make sure that you roll earlier. So you always want to make sure you have better econ than everybody else. The econ is important. When I say roll earlier, I don't mean like roll earlier in the round. I mean roll a whole round ahead of other people. If you're contesting the same comp, what usually benefits is that, especially with a comp like the Zeri comp, you just want to find one copy of Zeri and one copy of Sejuani, and then you're usually okay. So when you're playing contested, what you usually will do is, let's say you look at your opponent, you want to make sure you have so much more gold than them. Your econ matters way more than everything else because your stability is reliant on finding one copy of the unit. So what you'll end up doing is, like, let's say they're going to roll on 4-2. You look at their board, you look at their spot, and you say they're probably going to have enough gold to roll on stage 4. Then you want to roll ahead of that. You want to roll on 4-1. You want to level early. You want to have enough econ to justify rolling a whole round ahead of everybody else. That's typically the way that you should think about it. Roll earlier to guarantee that you have your units. You also have to be aware of what is needed for stability. Here I talked about these different builds and how you only need a Sejuani one and a Zeri one to be stable, but you also have to understand your itemizations, right? You can't really be stabilizing around other Exotech items if you don't have a proper build to support those other Exotech items. Additionally, if you have neither Hollow Bow or Pulse Stabilizer, Flux Capacitor, I always confuse the names of those two. I apologize, too many syllables in the names. If you don't have the yellow one or the purple one, you probably shouldn't be playing Zeri unless it's less contested, right? That's really important to note. And then you have to think about your pivot options as well. So here, I made a little breakdown. I'll probably do a full pivot guide at one point. It just doesn't make sense right now because of the way that the certain comps are shaking out. I'm going to wait till the next patch and then see if things are a little bit more balanced amongst the forecasts to talk more about pivot options. But when you think about the Zeri board, there's basically 3 different versions of Zeri or Exotech in general. There is Zeri where you have Hollow Bow. There's Zeri where you have Flux Capacitor. I got it right this time. And there's the version where you're playing Sejuani around playing with a Vex in the backline, which still could contest a lot of the Zeri players because your stability is also reliant a little bit on hitting this Sejuani, which can also be a little bit difficult. What you want to do here is you want to think to yourself, do I have an option that I can pivot off of these lines? For example, if you don't have a Guinsoo, right? Guinsoo is essential. If you don't have Guinsoo and some sort of ult critting item, you can't really expect to perform well with the Zeri. You need these conditions or else the Zeri does nothing, and it doesn't matter how strong the unit is, you're not going to top 4 with it. So then if you don't have these situations, or if you have these situations and you think that you have a good spot, let's say you hit like an Aphelios 2 on your roll down, you hit a Xayah 2 on your roll down, you can consider playing towards some of these other lines. Now, they are weaker lines, right? I'm not saying that playing around Aphelios is going to get you the same placement as a Zeri 2. What I'm saying is, if you don't have any Zeris, and you have an Aphelios 2, that's an idea of a pivot. The idea is that what is your average placement from one versus the other, right? Your expected placement. If you're playing around a certain comp, it works especially. It's very obvious with rerolls. I'll kind of give like a Twisted Fate example, because I think that's a little bit better to illustrate what I'm talking about. Like if you have a Guinsoo and you're trying to angle towards Zeri, and there's like 4 people in the lobby angling Zeri, like, you know, it's not going to work out for at least somebody. So it's a huge amount of RNG on whether you're the one of the 4 people that stabilizes around hitting your Zeri. What you could do is you could take less risk and pivot to one of the reroll lines that also uses a Guinsoo, especially if you already slammed a Guinsoo. Playing around Twisted Fate or Vayne uncontested, these are comps that can even out, like not Twisted Fate as much. Twisted Fate's more of like put the fries in the bag style comp, but Vayne especially is a comp that can often outcap Zeri boards if you hit everything. Like if you hit Jarvan 3, Senna 3, and Vayne 3, often it will outplace some Zeri boards even in the current state of the game. The idea is that with a reroll comp, your expected placement is somewhere between a range of like 3 to 6, let's say, right? Like, especially if you're playing Twisted Fate, you don't expect to go first, you don't expect to go second, but you can get maybe like a 3, a third, a fourth, maybe a fifth, but you're not going to get much worse than a 6th if you're playing Vayne or Twisted Fate. If you're playing Zeri and you don't hit a Zeri, you can go 8th, you can go 7th. It's a huge risk. Like, you can obviously also go first if you hit the Zeris, but if there's multiple people playing Zeri, there's a very low chance that you're going to be the one that comes out on top and hits the first, unless you have such a better spot, right? Unless you have more HP, more gold, better augments, unless everything's going for you, it might be a little bit worse. In that case, you should look for angles like these, because what you can do is, while everybody's contesting the same comp, even though it's a really strong comp, if none of them hit their boards, they'll all bleed out. They'll all lose a bunch of HP, and they'll probably die to some high roller. Meanwhile, you could save a bunch of HP and play towards rerolls, and that can be a really good option. Then there's also the 4-cost options, which I was talking about, which is like Aphelios, which usually uses Guinsoo and similar components, and Xayah. Playing around Golden Ox or playing around Marksman has become a little bit more popular, because it's a really nice pivot out of the Zeri option. It's actually rising in stocks, and you can see the placement of Marksman starting to get a little bit better, because people are starting to figure out how to properly play around these, and especially when a lot of people are contesting towards Zeri. But like I said, pivot options are usually only if you are the one with the worst spot. If you don't have the worst spot, then you probably have to tough it out, and it's going to be a hard game, and that's usually what happens when you're playing contested. Before we end up watching, I just wanted to show you guys 2 funny things. So I know I'm kind of smurfing a little bit. I shouldn't be in this elo because I just haven't played a lot of games yet. But I want to show you 2 or 3 games. Basically, all my Zeri games look like this. Whenever I have a spot for Zeri, I only play Zeri when I have Hollow Bow. I don't play it with Pulse Stabilize, or sorry, Flux Capacitor. But I can show you just in general, right? In this game, there were 4 people that were trying to play Zeri. The 2 Hollow Bow people placed top 4. The other ones placed like, I think 7th, 8th. I think this guy, he was holding Zeris, but he just never found it. And this guy just doesn't have a Zeri item, but he was trying to play Zeri for some reason. But I ended up going first, right? Because I just made sure to only play it if you have the best spot. That's typically what happens when you're playing contested. And I want to show you guys another funny one, which this is just for the end of the video. This is like the guide's done. This is just for fun. But this was a 4-way Exotech contest. 2 people playing Zeri and 2 people playing Vex version of Exotech. And I actually had Zeri 3 this game. I had like the Giga setup of Doom. So I just wanted to show you guys Zeri 3 because I don't know if you guys have ever seen it before, but it was kind of cool. So just as a little closer to the video. But this is what I mean by, like, you have to make sure that your spot is better than everybody else's. I contested Zeri here. I know the framing's bad. My computer crashed while I was playing this game, but the Zeri, it doesn't matter how many people are playing the same comp as you, because if you're gonna stabilize before them and outlive them and have better items and better item breakdown, I had better augments. As you can see here, I also picked invested. I made sure that I had a lot of gold this game to make sure that even though I was playing contested, I can cap out my board. As you can see, Zeri 3, really fun game for me at least. And it's really funny in the current landscape of the game to even consider hitting a Zeri 3, but I had 3 really good augments. I hit the Zeri, I had birthday presents, so I was able to tempo level, and I saved a lot of HP in my mid game. And that's usually what you need to do if you're playing contested. So always consider econ augments, consider making sure that you have the better spot, and then outplacing them based on those spots. And a lot of my Zeri games go like that, because sometimes I'll end up with a second, but I don't think I bought 4 with Zeri ever, because I only play Zeri if I have hollow bow. If you look at any of my history, I guarantee you I only play it when I have a good spot, and that's what I recommend other people doing. I know that it's like really tempting to always play it, but you should always make sure that the comp that you're contesting, even if it is a popular and strong comp, you want to make sure you have the conditions to actually win out or make that comp relevant and strong. You don't just want to blindly force it, because then you might have some issues. Anyways, that's some tips and some general advice for playing contested. Like I said, it's okay to be contested. Don't just pivot for no reason. If you have a good spot, play the comp that you can. If you have a better spot than everybody else, play the comp that you can. If you have a good pivot option, then take the pivot option. But like I said, be careful out there, have fun. A little bit of a shorter video today. Tomorrow we're going to do our 4-cost guide. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to talk about how to play 4-cost. Yesterday I did how to play reroll. Tomorrow is going to be how to play 4-cost. Need to take a little bit of a break today. It was also my stream day. So, trying to balance my life out. Thank you for watching. Have a great day and see ya. Bye-bye.